And the first guest of the evening is our good friend, Rick Velotta. Rick is, of course, business reporter over at the Las Vegas Review-Journal, and he wrote the story yesterday confirming that what we'll hear in a report this week from the Raiders and Stadco, which is the company set up to build the stadium for the Raiders and for the Las Vegas Stadium Authority, and he wrote that story about the delay. So Rick joins us now on our Newsmaker line. How you doing tonight, Rick?
I'm doing great, Scott. Good to talk to you again.
Yeah, keeping busy, I'm sure, right? You got that. You got a lot of things moving. The MGM sale today. I mean, there's never a boring day, right, in Las Vegas, especially when it comes to business news and all the growth that we're seeing around Las Vegas, of course.
That's why we like Las Vegas. It's a great news town.
It sure is, and yes. So let's jump in on the stadium situation. So of course we had heard sort of some rumors about the roof, and of course that cable system. The cable system that raises the roof at Allegiant Stadium is the most intricate part of the project. So if anything was going to get delayed or happen, it was probably going to be with the roof. But just to set the facts straight, why don't you start and kind of tell us exactly why it's delayed and when they feel like they're going to be able to resume the work to get it finished by what they've said now is May?
Well, from the very start, we've talked about how complicated this particular installation is. Don Webb, the COO of the subsidiary that's building the stadium, has fondly referred to it as a 12-acre Swiss watch. And I think that he's probably understating it a little bit because it's very complicated. Part of the problem is that they haven't done too many of these in the United States. They've done some in Europe. So it's a little bit different than anything that anybody's ever seen before. But it's a signature feature of the stadium, having this translucent roof that makes it appear like the game is outside, when in fact you're in air-conditioned comfort. Now, one of the things that they indicated was that last summer they were hoping to get this thing installed, I think as early as August. It got delayed to September, then October, then November, then December. And finally, the indication is that because they were not able to install it the way they wanted to, they've now brought in 5 teams of engineers to evaluate it and review it. And then now they're indicating that the installation would occur at its earliest mid-May, which I think for a lot of Raiders fans that you're talking about are freaking out right now.
Yeah,
probably because it's so close to the opening date, which is July 31st. I think it's noteworthy that to mention that July 31st date has not changed. They still anticipate they're going to have the stadium open on time by that date, regardless of these issues that they've had with the roof.
Yeah, and that's the one thing that I'll say, Rick, is there's been a lot of information out there, and of course there is a certain segment of the population, including folks in Oakland, who are angry that the team is leaving, who want things to go wrong. I don't think most people, even some people who were against the stadium, don't want things to go wrong because they know now that it's going to be done and it's happening, that it's important that get up and be functional for not only the Raiders but for the community. So that you understand, but with this project and with everything going along so quickly, I think the biggest, and we've talked about this on the show, right, with you, Rick, which is this whole design build process, which means things don't have to go in chronological order. So if the roof can't be finished, there are some risks, but it doesn't slow the project down. Now, let's talk about those risks. In your story, you talked about how because the roof won't be closed as it was supposed to be by this time, the stadium internally will now be subject to weather conditions that it might not have been. How worried are that? You know, we're going to get into our rainy season, if you want to call it that. We get 4 inches a year. But if you want to call it that, the rainy season coming up here January into February, how concerned are they with damage happening internally, which will maybe run costs up?
Well, one of the problems is that because it's still exposed to the elements, it's possible that some of the finish work that they've done, in other words, some of the drywalling and some of the paint and all that those other things, they are still exposed to the elements. So therefore, they could get ruined by any major storms. I have to stress major because still a lot of the stadium, including the concourse areas, are covered right now. So it's not like there's any direct water coming in to most of the stadium surface area. And then the other part of it is that the ground area that is going to be pretty well completed anyway, so it's not going to be that big of a problem unless we get a deluge of epic proportions. And then, it's one of those things that you just never know what's the weather going to do in Las Vegas. It's I've been living here long enough to remember a March many years ago that it rained just about every single day. But then there are some times when you'll go months and months and months without seeing a cloud. So
Yeah.
it just kind of depends on what happens.
Right, and we had a very wet winter last year, and of course we got snow in February, and back then we had a lot of the conspiracy folks saying snow was going to delay it. It was like, come on. But that's not to say that you take it lightly, because clearly that roof, everyone had known, and people that I know that work on the project have told me all along that if something was going to happen, and again, we're speaking with Rick Velotta of the Las Vegas Review-Journal, who wrote this story yesterday about the stadium roof delay. But Rick, we've heard that all along. While we don't hear how everything else is going so well, the stadium is progressing at a big pace, and I know the meeting is on Thursday, so we'll learn maybe some more from that report and hear what they have to say when they have to answer to the advisory board. But that project's going really, really well. Also, something that I'm knocking on wood for, not because of John Gruden, but because the site has had such a great safety record as well, and that's a big deal with a project this size.
Oh yeah. In fact, proportionally, they are way ahead of the average in terms of incidents that could potentially be, something that could hurt somebody. So a fantastic safety record that they've already put into place. The other thing that I think you kind of alluded to there is the fact that because there's been so much work done that is ahead of schedule, that's why they're able to predict an opening on July 31st as planned, because there were things that were placed on the schedule that have been done out of sequence that have actually been performed ahead of schedule. So that's the reason why, and that's why I think they have a lot of confidence that it's going to get done as planned.
Right. Again, speaking with Rick Velotta of the Las Vegas Review-Journal about the story this week concerning the delay of the stadium roof. Now, Rick, we know with the project and from your work and what you wrote yesterday or last night that they're still on target, like you said, for July 31st. Also, we know the first event is scheduled for August 16th, which we're assuming is the Raiders' third preseason game. We've heard about SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles, who's had an amazingly more difficult time building their stadium and having delays and cost overruns that are mind-boggling. But people have been asking, why aren't they kicking off the stadium with a concert? And it's because they're running up to that deadline. Is it right? Is it not? And they want to make sure the Raiders are in there for game number 3?
Well, and the thing is the Raiders have been playing it pretty close to the vest in terms of what that first event is. I'm not sure it is going to be a preseason game. It could be a concert, and certainly that's something that they'll announce in their own good time. But every indication is that the 2 preseason games that are scheduled to be in the stadium have not been pushed back or pushed away in any way, shape, or form in terms of the scheduling. And if they have a concert on that opening date, that'll kind of give them a shakedown before any football goes in there. So that's a good thing. That's a plus. And then the season itself starts a little bit later than I think it normally does. Mm-hmm. So that kind of gives them a little bit of a cushion, but not much. There's not much of a cushion there. And I think if we all did a poll here, everybody would say, gee, we would rather have that roof in place right now so that we can worry about other things leading up to the July 31st opening date.
Sure, and then you get to work inside the stadium without the issue of weather issues and having to maybe fix items because and moving with the finishing product, right? That's what you talked about, drywall and things like that. It goes by very fast. Now, Rick,
there's no.
Go ahead.
I was going to say there's no doubt that as things get closer to the end, as is the case in just about every project, there are more workers that are brought in and added shifts, things like that. So we're likely to see the pace of the construction actually pick up in these last few months leading up to the opening.
Yeah, absolutely. And Rick, the one thing too that and I've talked to a couple folks associated with the project and with the team, and I've been told numerous times, and I just want to check with you if you're hearing the same thing. There is no contingency plan. So there's no they're going to play in Oakland for a couple games if the stadium's not done, or they're going to play somewhere else. Are you hearing the same thing?
Well, actually, they do have a contingency plan. The Raiders, pretty smart in terms of doing their due diligence and watching out for any eventuality. They do have a lease agreement in place that they could, I emphasize could, play at Oakland Alameda County Stadium again if in this next year if they needed to. But that's something that is not likely. And it certainly isn't something that the Raiders are planning for at this point.
No, that would not be. I mean, I know today. I'm sure you saw the pictures of the crane up in Alameda taking off the facade, the letters, and the logo of their headquarters up there. So they're ready to move to Las Vegas, even though that's not officially happening fully until the team breaks camp. Yeah, and then in March, obviously, they'll have staff in that office building in Henderson, which will be interesting. But the meeting on Thursday, I've gotten a lot of direct messages and questions today in social media because people knew I was going to talk to you. What do we expect Thursday? Are we going to expect any surprises Thursday, or we kind of know where this is going to go and based on that report and what you reported yesterday?
I think that most of the information is out there in the reports. The only things that we might get are some additional details from Don Webb and from Mark Bedane if they choose to elaborate any further on some of the matters that have been brought up. Certainly, with a 9-member stadium authority that's in place, they could ask questions and pick the brains of these guys to kind of get some specific details. But I'm not expecting any big fireworks in terms of any bombshell announcements or events that are going to happen at that Thursday meeting, although that's why we go to the meetings. It's like playing the game. You always go because you never know what's going to happen. And certainly something that has such wide-ranging interest in a number of different fans are always going to they're always going to be concerned about what the actions are that are being taken and to make sure that everything's in place the way they want them to be.
Rick, in about the minute we have left, too, what's the latest you're hearing on the draft and location of all the draft festivities?
Well, we've reported quite some time ago that all indications are that it would be at the Caesars Forum area in the Link Promenade area. There's going to be a meeting next Tuesday of the Clark County Commission at which they'll be talking about what streets are going to be closed down, and we fully anticipate that parts of Flamingo Road are going to be closed down in order to accommodate a draft festival per se at the Link Promenade. There are other venues throughout Las Vegas that are going to be playing some kind of a role in the draft festivities. So all I can say is stay tuned on that. I don't believe that Commissioner Goodell is going to make any big announcements when he speaks here Friday, but we're also going to be listening in on that to see if he drops any hints on what some of the details of that event in April are going to be. Yeah, that'll be really interesting, and we appreciate all the work you've done on this, Rick, and will continue to do. Again, Rick Velotta from the Las Vegas Review-Journal. Make sure you follow him on Twitter. It is his name, at Rick, RickVelotta. Great job again, my friend, and we'll talk to you real soon. Thanks, Scott. All right, Rick Velotta, there you go, Chaz. We're up to date on what's going on with the stadium. No, it's not falling down. No, there's no conspiracy. It's not Capricorn 1 faking the moon or the Mars landing. At this point, it's pretty standard. It's rain would really be the biggest hindrance. Right, if you had torrential rains and issues that would create problems in there. And, hey, it could happen. Doubtful. 4 inches a year? Yes. Doubtful. Yeah. Doubtful. As we say that. Storm clouds are brewing. All right, so you're up to date on the stadium roof. We're going to step aside when we come back. We're going to go back out on the phones. We're going to